I don't talk much about Gnostic ideas these days because I'm busy with new philosophy. But I thought I would in this video in response to a question from somebody called Kaf. So Kaf, this is for you. But if I say something worthwhile, I'll stick it out generally. So if you're watching this, it's because I hope it may be more generally of interest. And it's about soul traps. It's the idea that we're being kept in this prison of the world by the demiurge and his archons, and the way in which Kath is asking me about the way in which the modern ideas like the near-death experience, in particular the life review, have been co-opted into that view. And I would like to address that kind of paranoid Gnosticism. And there's always been a thread of paranoid Gnosticism. A strong one, actually, and for understandable reasons. I think historical reasons. I just don't think it's understandable now. I think we've moved beyond that, and I find it a very negative and irrational, I guess, is the word. So let's get into this as best I can, and my glasses are all steaming up here because it's quite hot here today, so you'll have to excuse me, but I need them on to be able to read the question from Kath. Oh, before I do that, folks, if you'll stick with me, I'm sure, if you're interested in this subject, anyone, Kath, this includes you, is most welcome to come to my online group. We meet every Sunday night, UK time night. You don't have to pay a subscription up front or anything like that. You can come as a guest, see what you think. It's very small, it's very intimate, and we engage. You can engage directly with me, and we can deal with these profound questions. The people that come are very open-hearted, very open-minded, and we can dive deeply into really questioning this mysterious business of being alive together. So there'll be a link with this video, and come along. Come along, Kath, come along. You know, let's actually engage. Let's actually move forward in our experience of being alive. All right, so that's what's open to you, and it's just my gift to you. So Kath says, neo-Gnostic ideas are increasingly circulating on the YouTube about the reincarnation soul trap. So the soul trap theory, I'm not sure what the hell that is. It sounds like it's something which has become big on the internet. I can guess. Please excuse me. And for those that are like the theory, you may be very critical of me for not going out and really researching it. I just don't have time. Because I'm pretty sure the essence of it is going to be the same as the essence of it was 2,000 years ago. And if I'm wrong about that, then I apologize, but I'm going to address it as that because that's the only thing I'm an expert in this area. Kath says, I'm well aware you've spent considerable time researching the history of humanity's NDEs and how they've morphed over time and across cultures. Yep, I have. Indeed, your TED talk was most illuminating. I've watched it twice and then shared it. Thank you, Kath. It seems a long time ago now I did the TED talk, but it's a pretty good introduction. What do you make of these thousands of NDEs? I think they're really important. I think they point to a level of reality that we need to take seriously and which we need to understand within our incredible, extensive scientific understanding. And we need to not do that in a reductionist way, but see that that after death we're experiencing an imaginal level of reality like we are now. We're already doing it. That's where all the ideas we're experiencing are happening, and that's already the case. It seems we go much deeper into that imaginal reality. So the soul trap idea. Here we go. All right. There's a lot of people arguing that the life review, which is where you see in the near-death experience, it's very common for people to see their life and to, as if they're re-experiencing it, like every detail. And the idea which Kath is sharing is that people are saying it's a rigged game, that a soul can never win. It's a con. You'll always be found short of the mark, and you will always be guilted into returning, reincarnating. That we really aren't here to learn things, that we are being kept here for nefarious reasons, which has nothing to do with growth, that we don't need hundreds of lives to learn what most learn in a single life, and that nothing of real import can be learned from being tortured or abused as a child, etc., etc. Indeed, after laying out such arguments, many speakers then encourage people not to go towards the light and its associated love bomb at death. Some OBEers have even claimed to have mapped out parts of this recycling station in the upper astral realm. All right, so here's where I think it comes from and why I think it's a total mistake. And disturbing mistake as well. The Gnostics were arriving, the Christian Gnostics were arriving in history at a time where they were seeing that their God, Yahweh, was a tribal, mean tribal thunder god. I mean, also, the dispenser of the wisdom of the Jewish people at that point as well. I mean, it's not one-dimensional, but they could see the problems of God at the beginning. The idea that there's a powerful deity who runs things at the beginning of creation, because creation is so full of suffering. So the fundamental problem is the problem of evil. If there's a good God, why is there so much evil? And personally, I don't think there's any way around that question. If God is if there's a creator God running the show, then it's not a very good show. It doesn't make the God look good. Now, what was interesting is that when we came across that same dilemma at the period of the Enlightenment in the 17th, 18th centuries, it took a while, actually, but people began to be able to go, that's because there is no God. Just forget the idea. I think there is a God, by the way, just as a spoiler alert, but I'm going to see it in a very different way. They felt that there is no God. They were able to do that. It took that long for significant numbers of the population to go, yeah, that's a crazy idea. There is no God. We can understand it without that. We can understand what existence is without that. But the early Gnostics weren't able to do that. They weren't able to come around and go, well, there is no Yahweh. That's nonsense. So what they did is they changed the way they saw Yahweh. They went, look, there's the real God of Jesus, which is a God of love, and that's a God beyond Yahweh, and developed a complex and interesting mythology, which led from something benign to this demiurge, the creator of this world, and that developed in its paranoid form into the idea that we were being kept here in some sort of prison. Now, that's not very far away from a lot of other spiritual traditions, that karma brings you back and you have to reincarnate and suffer again until you overcome it all and get free, or the Buddhist idea that it takes thousands and thousands of lives and eventually you get back out of the illusion. Non-duality is a bit like that. Lots of them. Platonism is a bit like that. So this rather negative view of what it is to be alive is quite common at that time. We have it less now because we've made it better to be alive than it was, and so we're more likely to see it favourably. And hurrah for that, I think. So what they do is they turn the demiurge into this mean who's keeping you trapped, and the solution is to let go of it altogether. There's no demiurge, there's no evil archons. These are all images in the psyche, of which we have so many. And we can understand all of this in a different way. So what I would suggest is that, and I can't go through all of this philosophy in a few minutes because it's a lot, so I'll just gesture towards it. The essence of Gnosticism is the gnosis. And the gnosis is for real. Or, let me say it differently, because that might be misunderstood. There is, I suggest, from my experience, without doubt, no, with doubt, because there's doubt with everything, but with the least doubt that I have around anything, there is an experience of something greater than oneself. And it blows you away. It is so expansive. It's so beautiful. It's an experience of this immense love or benevolence. And when you have it, and if you are able to keep returning to it, it just has such an impact on life. So that's what led, I think, the early Gnostics, some of them were having that and then going, yeah, but this can't be to do with this world and Yahweh. And these awful ideas, which I think are awful ideas, that we're here, we need thousands of lives to learn, and that's to get free, that somehow we can be learned by being tortured or abused as children. Yeah, I think these are all really bad ideas. But we don't need to understand them as some sort of, like some cosmic conspiracy theory that there's people doing this to us on some higher plane. Rather, I think we can understand all of it within an evolutionary philosophy, including the great insights of the Gnostics in a completely new way, which they didn't have access to because they could not possibly conceive of the size of the universe, which we now know, the fact that we can work out roughly how old it is, 14 billion years roughly. That may change, but we've got that idea now, that we can see that everything in it has evolved, including the physical universe, let alone life. They couldn't see any of this. Of course they couldn't. They were living in a very different time. But we can. And once you put it into that context, what I am exploring, and I'm just going to say what it is I'm exploring without being able to justify it, is that everything is this one process of forming from a very, very simple basis, which is best understood with mathematics, the simplest relationships you can imagine. It's a very Pythagorean idea. He was well ahead of the curve. The Gnostics are kind of neo-Pythagorean, so they might like that. But from the one in relationship, so the one as two, a bit, this or that, the simplest information, the one has become differentiated into everything on all of these levels of emergence, from physical to biological and now to psyche. Psyche's Greek for soul, to the soul. And that in that process of evolving, we've seen what looks like miracle after miracle, because it's so extraordinary what's happened. But that's not because there's some demented creator God at the beginning. No, what's at the beginning is the simplest thing you can imagine. It's not a God of love, and it's not a God who's a mean demiurge either. It's the one being differentiated. And by the one, I mean what we mean by the number, one. I mean it in a Pythagorean way. And that is differentiated into everything. So there is no demiurge. There's no one running the show. And that's why we have to contend with all of the ad hoc suffering that arises from that process. And we live with it still. And we always will. But in that process, things have emerged onto new levels in these miraculous ways that I mentioned. One of them is the existence of life. One of them that's important is the existence of consciousness, and the imagination, the psyche. And then what I have suggested briefly in my TED Talk and then in detail elsewhere is that the psyche has evolved to survive the death of the body. And I'm not going to go into that now. You'll have to look up that elsewhere. It's all in my book, Soul Story. And that what we're experiencing after death with these NDEs is the type of common experiences we have, that basically what I'm suggesting is, look, you're already experiencing a flow of sensations of the world and a flow of imaginal information with dreams and thoughts and images, and if you go deeper, shamanic experiences, psychedelic experiences. What happens at death is the body can't function, so you lose the sensory experience, but the other experience that you're already having continues and goes deeper, and that's what people experience. Part of that is the life review. It's not about trapping you, it's not about persuading you you should have achieved anything. There's no one outside of you telling you should achieve anything. There's just a process of emergence. What is remarkable about the life review is the lack of judgment outside, but rather that people can look themselves from the most emergent place and go, ooh, I see it differently. I'm 65. I'm doing that with my life every day now. I'm looking at it differently. And that is, I'm learning from it. Not because all those suffering was stuck in there for, some nefarious reason, but because anything that I look back on now, I can gain from. Anything. The good bits and the bad bits. Because that's what it is to have a life. In fact, given that the universe, reality itself, is a process, that's what it is. Look, it's a process. Then I'm a process. So are you. So what am I? There's a later question from Kaf here. What is it? What is it that goes to the light? What is it that, what is consciousness that goes to the light? What I'm suggesting is that you are an emerging system on a psychobiological level, and then when the biology drops, just the psyche level. That's what we are. And we're made of the past. I am everything I've ever experienced. I am the one differentiated into Tim in relationship with the one differentiated as everything else. And my identity is the history of that relationship. So that's what goes. Now, I'm going to do one more idea, and then I'm sure that'll be enough for this. So no God at the beginning, no intelligent design, but actually the emergence of intelligence. No creator, but the emergence of creativity, leading to us here. And not us alive for 10 minutes then gone, but us able to continue that journey. So there's elements in there the Gnostics couldn't have known, and there's elements there which they'd kind of got, which is pretty impressive. And one of the things they got was, and this was a big shift, was there's a God of love. You go back, before the Gnostics, you don't find that so much. Not at all, really. This is a big realization. And I want to suggest it's a big realization because it's a new thing in the universe. That the God you experience, if that's even the right word, but let's use it because it's traditional, that you experience in the gnosis, this greater being of love, or you feel it as love when you commune with it, isn't at the beginning. It's the most emergent, the most complex, leading edge of 14 billion years of evolution. And what I've been exploring is that thing which has been called God is a communion of psyches or souls. So just like my body, for most of the period of life, there was just single cells. And then somehow, through this amazing process we're in, they got together to form a multicellular organism, eventually as complex as you and me. And what I think is happening is that when we come into communion, when we come into a state of oneness with the universe, we start to form a higher system than any one of us individually. And that's the experience of that immense beauty and immense love. We are forming. So there's not God at the beginning and we've fallen, but we are playing a role in the arising or the emergence of God, which is something greater than us. So what's beautiful about that for me is it enables me to avoid all of the problems which the Gnostics had that made them turn God into the devil, Yahweh into the devil, and go, oh, we're trapped by this horrible thing. So we don't need any of that. Forget all that. We're in a process of emergence. There is no one at the beginning. What's at the beginning is the simplest thing you can imagine, but it is leading to, and they were getting where two or more are gathered together, I'll be there, all of that stuff. They are beginning to get there is a greater system. So the big mind is not at the beginning, as, say, the Hermetica would have it. The big mind is the leading edge. It's where we come together and form a greater soul, something greater than us. And it's not running the show. It's responding to it, just like we are, but on an even more emergent level. So its level of love and wisdom is really high. And that's the light. That's what, I have experienced the light. I don't mean that metaphorically. I have been immersed in the light. And it's the most incredible experience. There's nothing nefarious about it. There's nothing out to get you. It is communing with something utterly sublime. And there's every chance that when you die, if not before, you will get the chance to do that. And my advice from my experience is embrace it. Do not let these paranoid ideas stand in the way of that. Because this is the great insight of the original Gnostics. Not the paranoid side. That's outdated. We leave that now. They freed us. They freed us from the old religion. But now we need to be free of their old religion and continue the Gnostic spirit, to not repeat what they said, but to do what they did, which was to challenge what they received, turn it on its head, and move us forward. And that's what I'm interested in. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I hope that was of some interest. It's kind of off the cuff. I haven't talked about these things for a long time. And if you are CAF, thank you for suggesting this, and I hope this was of interest to you too.